Welcome back to the second part of The Voice of London today. And now I'm with this incredible young man, Tony Selimi, author, really a coach as well, and really someone that millions of people look up to around the world now for your inspirational views on life at the same time. And you created this latest book, Loneliness. So I thought, what could be a better topic right now coming out of lockdown than loneliness? So why did you write it in the first place?
Loneliness is it's a very dangerous thing that happens in the society, because not only impacts the way we behave, it impacts our mental health, but also its latest research associates loneliness with high blood pressure. It can activate and deactivate certain genes. It can impact our heart. It can impact our organs. And ultimately, to some people, loneliness can lead to death and suicide. So a lot of the mental health issues that people experience as a result of loneliness. And, you know, if we look at how loneliness has evolved with the evolution of technology and science and, I would say, the fast-paced life, about 20 years ago, the research showed that people can confine at least in 10 people. Today, not even one.
So is the book explaining loneliness, or is the book sort of saying this is how to come out of loneliness? Is it a self-help book?
It is a self-help book, and one other thing, it's very difficult for men to talk about loneliness. You know, women are used to share with each other. So before I wanted to give people like a roadmap to how to get out of loneliness and what they can do about it, and how to identify it, because sometimes we don't even identify our own loneliness. I wanted to share 12 stages of my life that I felt extremely lonely, extremely isolated, depressed, and to the point that I almost wanted to commit suicide, and actually I attempted to commit suicide. And all of those stages in my life, I believe billions of people are going through those stages in their own unique form. So, you know, I didn't want to be somebody who's an expert and done 30 years of work just to say to people, this is how you do it. I wanted to start them on a journey so they can identify with me sharing transparently my emotional journey and the journey through loneliness because of certain shifts in our outer environment and in our internal state that they can follow and start identifying bit by bit so they can awaken themselves into get outside of loneliness and live more of a connected and love-infused life.
Absolutely. And don't you think one of the biggest messages coming out of loneliness is that it can change? You know, in my own life, I went through very similar periods to yourself as well. And I think it helps me right now because we were just discussing before we came on air about lockdown. And I think the reality for me, lockdown, it just went through. All it created was a lot more work for me, in actual fact. How did it affect you during lockdown?
Well, for me personally, also did not affect me. The only thing that affected me, a lot of my business flights were cancelled because I had a lot of training going on around the world with different clients. But what I did is basically instantly I transformed my business into virtual business. I couldn't deliver those training programs, but I could still deliver consultations. And there are more and more people actually booking consultations because the lockdown created a lot of mental issue. But not just that, there's a lot of people who are in abusive relationship. And lockdown was the worst part for people who may be with somebody who potentially might be very toxic for them. But also I worked with businesses who actually we innovated, we adapted, and we very quickly, swiftly changed. And that kept me busy. But on top of that, I'm actually completed my 4th book.
Yes.
Which is now in the publishing process.
It gave you time. But
gave me time.
I think you had a problem with your partner as well.
Yes, I mean, one of the things, not just with my partner, a lot of my clients, because I do coach and mentor a lot of professional people from different backgrounds, especially doctors and professionals in the healthcare industry. Now, my partner, the moment we got back from Dominican Republic, where I was training my 5-day program, the Vital Planning for Elevated Living, which is a very advanced business accelerating program, we came back and within the first 10 days he got ill. and we didn't even know.
And this is what, coronavirus?
Coronavirus, correct.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, I got scared. For the first time in my life, I really got scared. Not just that, but also the other 3 doctors that are my clients, they got it at the same time in March.
Were they all the same hospital? Or was it
No, different hospitals.
Really?
Absolutely different hospitals. One is like northeast, one is southwest, the other one, 2 are in central London. And it was scary to hear their stories and to hear how they were expected to work in an environment which is potentially life-threatening. And a lot of healthcare professionals at the beginning of this pandemic, they did not know what they were dealing with. And also the failures when it comes to leadership, when it comes to government, when it comes to response, when it comes to using the information that people had when this outbreak happened, a lot of the decisions weren't made on time, which then has all these effects and led to loss of life.
Did you feel anger yourself, towards what's happening to your partner, but also towards a profession that really should be looked after?
Absolutely, because I love NHS, and I think millions in this country will agree with what I've just said, but also a lot of people around the world, like in America, they don't have the same healthcare system like we do. And we can see the effect now where the loss of life is consistently growing. The anger came like, you know, those people look after us. And if those people are not tested, if those people are not given the right information and being looked after, and they are expected to save lives in a dangerous conditions, we actually, you know, we're not showing our humanity. And for me, when my partner got ill, because he's on a 0-hour contract, during those 3 weeks he wasn't working, he wasn't even paid. And there are many people within the NHS who actually are on those contracts that people have that basically, although at work they contracted the virus, but nobody cared what happened to them and what happens to their families. So, you know, we clap for NHS, but we're not paying the NHS what they deserve. We clap for NHS, but what happens to the family members of those NHS people? You know, the effect is much wider than that. So I think all of us, we need to do more around that. But, you know, we've moved quite a lot since then. Hopefully things will improve.
And I suppose it was a different type of loneliness for people who got coronavirus. I don't know whether your partner was in hospital, you know, but some of these people who were confined to a hospital bed and intensive care as well, it's a different type of loneliness, isn't it? It's not a loneliness that they have brought upon themselves because they haven't reached out. It's a loneliness of and fear, I suppose, anxiety of, am I going to die?
Correct. That fear, am I going to die, it goes through everybody's head at the moment, not just people who contracted the virus. But I think globally, people have that fear now. And I think because of the responses that governments around the world have created, we've created, I would say, post-traumatic corona disorder. That it will take years for people to really come back into a healthy mental and emotional mindset, but also build the trust that people need to go to travel, to socialize, to go into the pubs, to go into the restaurants, to go shopping, to do all the normal things that people are used to. Because this underlying fear, and also instead of promoting well-being, promoting how we can grow our immune system, how to be mentally more agile and more robust, something we spoke about earlier on, majority of the media around the world were focused on fear instilling. And it's almost like people nowadays are conscious how the governments can manipulate certain information to almost steer direction. But I think today's voters, today's people want the truth. They want a roadmap, they want leaders who inject certainty, and leaders who make decisions that the masses benefit from, but also have a much wider overview of the impact this is having. And trying to balance both the loss of life with the economy, it's difficult for any leader. So I can see how that can be very difficult for our government, but also for the leadership around the world, because the truth is none of them were prepared.
And don't you think this fear, this anxiety is going to increase loneliness because people are going to isolate and they're being told isolation is the best form of protection. So from a loneliness point of view as well, they are challenging. I mean, normally we're a gregarious race anyway, but they're actually challenging even the most common held views that we should go out to the world, we should explore, we should buy whatever it is at the same time. So how do you think the government should be fighting this right now, this loneliness factor as well? Mm-hmm. Because in one hand they're saying wear masks, stay at home, and on the other hand saying, for God's sake, come out and spend some money, because otherwise we're going to go broke. How do you perceive something like that? How would you advise the government right now to actually get people overcoming the fear of isolation and loneliness as well, and get them out into the public eye again?
The first thing I would do is the government needs to address the fears that the masses have. And there are many ways to address that, but one of the things that the government can create, like the roadmap they created, it's very vague. You can't really follow a roadmap when it doesn't have a clear instructions. Yeah. So far what we're getting from the government is instructions that nobody understands. It's including all the different rules. I think government, what they can do, it's basically, there'll be always risk in life. We cannot underestimate the power of this risk that we have. However, I think the government, to try to balance the thing, they can do so much to instill trust in people. Firstly, we've been through this pandemic now for almost 4 months and leading into the 5th month. And knowing the resources that we have available, especially what the government is throwing, I find it very shocking that we did not do trace, isolate, heal, and go back to normal.
Absolutely.
A simple step that any engineer, my background is engineering, if you tackle any pandemic or any problem, you trace it, you isolate it, you heal it, and we have examples around the world that they've been very effective, including in New Zealand, for instance. Yeah. And they did it with so much love and nurturing. Our government at the moment has not demonstrated that. Yeah. I think if they bring more people into the government that can share that love and they can start building that certainty, especially experts out there like myself and other people who work in the domain of mental health, psychology, and bringing certainty and almost changing behaviors, but still remaining safe and still being able to isolate. I think the biggest problem we have, which is the fact that we did not do that from the beginning.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. For me, I say in all my shows and my shows overseas as well, we've changed sound judgment into sound bites. And that's what we seem to sort of live by right now. We see so much confusion. You're so right in saying, and I think the reality at the moment is the fear factor that they created, it worked. But the reason why they created the fear factor is that they knew the NHS might be overrun otherwise. So they just got people to stay at home. So I think now the reality with this and the loneliness, do you think there's going to be a pandemic in loneliness now?
I think we already have it. We already have it because, for some people, fortunately, they may have people around them. But my experience in the last 4 months with working with different clients from around the world via Skype, some people are even now developed the fear of leaving the house. And there's a clear sign and clear evidence that those people didn't have that fear. When we're looking at the elderly generation, elderly are much more prone to loneliness and the fears to try to, I would say, bring them back into normality. Younger people are much easier adaptable. But the older you get, your adaptability becomes lower because you don't take the risks that you would take when you are younger. So loneliness is already spreading, and I call it's like a virus. It's eating people inside out. And if we want to beat this pandemic, we must have this balance between empowering people through their mental health, boosting their immune system, and also encouraging walks, encouraging activities that people boost their energy. So the body naturally can fight a virus. and also have all those safety measures about cleaning your hands and wearing a mask where in public transport, the validity about the mask, it's a whole different issue. But I think the government must instill those habits that bring that positivity in us, that encouragement, that hope. And so people can start trusting to be able to go to Oxford Street and say, I'm going to shop something, or being able to go on holiday. Because a lot of people are worried. You're worried for yourself, and fear of death now it's in everybody's head. You're worried about your loved ones because you're going to go on holiday. You have no idea what you've touched, who you've spoken to, and there is no some form of, let's say, wearable thing that says this person has coronavirus. And the symptoms of the coronavirus have evolved from the beginning. Now we have much wider symptoms. And any of those symptoms, I was talking to all of the doctors who had COVID. Now all of them show different symptoms. And now some of them, when I asked them about normal illnesses, that they have similar symptoms. Now people can confuse sometimes. Somebody could have a flu and say it's a coronavirus. So all of those symptoms that are currently in there can relate to almost 200 different illnesses that they can give you the same symptoms.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Now I'm going to give a quote to you from Loneliness, and it's, do not compare ego-driven agendas and money with priceless relationships. Although helpful for a few days, love and integrity are helpful forever. Explain. We have become a society with very shallow relationships, and people pursue goals and ideologies and, I would say, outcomes which are short-lived without really thinking the long-term pain behind that they create. Now, one thing that I've learned from my parents is about everything I do with integrity. And if somehow I made a mistake, I go back and repair the damage. And it's extremely important for us to build long-term relationships. And relationships are priceless. If we want to fight loneliness and other things, having relationships is one of the keys. But most people almost have become, I would say, get easily tricked by their ego to satisfy their momentary satisfaction, and then jeopardize a long-term relationship which is much more fruitful. And if you see that, like when we're talking about relationship and integrity, you can see that in government, and you can see how people have lost trust in government. Why? Because there's no integrity. They say one thing, they do something else. And today's voters are, I would say, much more educated voters than 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, because we have got all the media available to us to be able to put one and one together. And I think this is the challenge, and especially with evolution of artificial intelligence, which I talk about in #loneliness, we will be able to see even more transparently when people lie. And what's interesting is that to observe how voters, they know certain people they voted in lie, but they still voted them. And for me, that's a phenomenon across the world at the moment that we're going, that all you have to do to be a prime minister or elected president, you lie a lot and you twist the truth, you polarize the nation, and you become a president. Yeah. And I find that fascinating. Well, I find it alarming.
Well, fascinating and alarming
at the same time. Now, I know that you've got lots of things going on at the moment, and you're going to do the first International Business Symposium of the Academy of Sciences in Switzerland shortly as well. Tell me a little bit about what you're going to be doing there.
With Fadil and Hetem Ramadani, which is a very, very successful Albanian entrepreneur, and Fadil being the co-founder of the Leadership Academy, and me working quite a lot in the space of leadership, we thought, okay, let's empower the Albanian community in business and in leadership. Because I think the foundation has been laid now, and we brought together the 3 different skills to really be of service to people, Albanian diaspora around the world, but also inspiring the Albanian people in the, like Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, Montenegro, and other regions around Balkans where there's a lot of Albanian people live. But reaching out the Albanian community to create more of a, I would say, cohesion and enhance the power of the Albanian businesses so they can make a bigger difference, not only in the countries where we come from, but globally. and also bring that light of the impact those businesses are doing around the world. As you said, there's a lot of Albanian people around the world, but nothing connects them.
Precisely.
But the reality in business, those businesses across the Balkans and Albanian businesses around the world have a very good, I would say, power and a message for the world, and also solutions to different problems. And the idea came together between me and Fadil to really create this and start the level of bringing emotional intelligence within the business, but also developing the leaders. So developing those leaders and activating leadership across their business. And when you do that, we start really seeing a whole transformation in the society.
I mean, we sing from the same hymn sheet on this because, you know, I see the values of Albanians across the world. And I've led on several occasions recently where I think Albanians and Albanian business leaders across the world should be talking more up about how they've actually created success stories, because it's what I call the Albanian DNA. The Albanian DNA has this value of being able to succeed over adversity and to build. And if the one asset we need right now in this world are team builders, are business builders again, who can actually sort of show how to sort of do something like this. And I think Albanians are very, very well placed right across the world in different organizations. For me, I still think, and I go back to tourism in Albania, and Albania for the past few years have always been noted by some of the top platforms as the most underrated, most underreported tourist attraction that there is. Why is that?
I think we have to talk about 100 TV shows, but if we look back into 100 years, and if we look at the politics of the, I would say, the Serbian community and different nationalities in former Yugoslavia and in the Balkans who actually tried to split Albania and ruled Albania for so many years, and they put it into pieces. But the reality is the Albanian people never went into war. Okay, although they've been split up and everything else, it's literally this adversity that and this desire by oppressors to almost eliminate the Albanian nations. It's also what built resilience within us. You know, which is very basic human right, you know, to be who you are and to express your identity as you are. Because Albanians weren't really doing any crimes out there, but the crimes were imposed on them. And you know, when we look, one of the major problems that I see today is Albanians not having a unique philosophy that bridges all the differences they have in the different stuff and coming together as one voice. But there is a massive movement in the diaspora about Albanians who are extremely successful. And they become voice for a lot of younger generations who actually in their heart, they know the Albanians and they know they have something, a gift to give to the world. I mean, we see the likes of Rita Ora, for instance. You know, when we look at the big global megastars around the world, we have a lot of Albanians, a lot of inventors, a lot of business owners, a lot of negotiators, people like myself and authors. So it's a rich culture. And I think it's beautiful with you guys in here supporting that, because I believe every child has a dream.
Yeah.
And it's nobody's, I would say, right to take the dream of that child away from that child. But we as a society, we can encourage each other's diversity and culture and grow together.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, I think for me, I'm a message maker, you know, I've been doing it 54 years now. I think Albanians need to believe more in themselves. That's my personal belief, because when I first started meeting Albanians, I love the Albanian community. It reminds me of my childhood as well, the family instincts, business instincts, how welcoming, how polite people are that I responded to at the same time. But people were constantly coming up to me and apologizing. And I kept on saying, stop apologizing. You know, I see you as very brave people. You come from Albania to UK, for example. That's a very brave thing to do. That's a really brave thing to do. And you're successful. And so that's why we fight, you know, when we see these bad stories about Albanians. Yes, there are some bad stories, I get it, but it's about 1% of the values that Albanians bring to Britain at the same time. So for me, I think it's just more of a message of be proud of who you are and talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, there are in every nationality, in every nation, in every creed, there is a percentage of people who, you know, operate from pain, I would say it. I say when people do bad things, it's because they have this inner pain that they have not learned how to resolve or empower themselves to be able to manage it properly. Yeah. So anybody who does any form of crimes, I see it as something that they live in pain. And until we really raise our awareness in being able to tackle any form of problems like that, not because they are part of certain community, part of certain religion, but because they are a human being experiencing something, and then we create an environment in which they can heal, our society will flourish.
And on that note, Tony, excuse me, thank you so much for today. Time is against us as always, but it's been exhilarating to hear from you again, and I wish you so much success again with the ventures this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So for me, Ian Pelham Turner on AlbUK Television, the Voice of London and positivebritain.co.uk, I hope you've had another very, very interesting day. I think the topics we've touched upon today are absolutely magnificent, and to have the magnificent Mr. Selimi here as well is another really sort of great opportunity to talk to him about the values of Albania today. So for me and from Tony, thank you, have a great day, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.